Welcome, everyone. My name is Christina Spiritu. I am with PACE, Pacific Asian Consortium on Employment. And this is our the fourth of our series of procurement masterclasses. So this is on small business certifications. The past few weeks, we've done an intro to procurement. That's the first one. We had developing capability statements. Then we had how to look for and then register through the bid portals. And now we're on the small business certifications to round out just a few things that we need to know on the basics of procurement. So welcome everyone. And so for those of you who had missed the previous webinars, they are recorded and I will provide a link afterwards. We also have I usually also send out an email after the webinar, just a couple things, including the recording link and then also slides. So we will get started very, very shortly. And then thank you. Hello, Gigi. Welcome. Welcome. She is from FACCOC, Filipino American Chamber of Commerce from Orange County. So welcome. So let's follow Gigi's lead and then put your name, your industry, your company name, and then also where you're from on the chat so we can get to know you better. And then we'll get started very, very shortly. I just wanted to just do like a minute or two uh, to just have people trickle in. Hello, Gladys. So thank you for introducing yourself on the chat, Gladys Bustos. And then Cindy, welcome. Okay, we're gonna get started. Okay. And you already are ahead of me, so put your name and your information down in the chat. But again, for those of you who are just trickling in, welcome to PACE, Specification Consortium and Employment. And this is small business certifications. This is our fourth out of four series of webinars. We've done the intro to procurement. We've also done developing capability statements. We had our looking for bid opportunities last week, and then this is on small business certifications to round out just a few things that we need to know on the basics of procurement. So to just start with just a few housekeeping items, you are on listening mode. Please use the raise hand function if you'd like to unmute and ask questions. Use the Q&A to post questions or the chat function. I'll try to do a little bit of Q&A at the end, about 10 minutes beforehand. So we'll see how it goes. Hopefully we'll have a little bit of time. But then if I don't get to your questions today, feel free to also do a one-on-one with me later. So I'll give you my information. We also have our webinars recorded. Please visit our e-library. And then also, please complete our survey when the webinar ends so then we know what what stuff you're looking for and what works for you and doesn't work for you, because our goal is always to make these things better suited to what you guys want to listen to and what you want to see. And then, as I said, just put your name on the chat, say hello. A few of you are doing that already, so welcome. Okay, so let's get started. So just a little bit about PACE. PACE is Pacific Asian Consortium on Employment. We're a nonprofit organization that's been around since the 70s, but in particular, PACE has a business development center, which is what the procurement team is part of. And the Business Development Center has several different programs that are funded by grants from different levels of government. So, for example, one of the grants that we have is through the MBDA from the U.S. Department of Commerce, and MBDA stands for the Minority Business Development Agency. And that grant allows us to work with socially and economically disadvantaged business owners. And then I am also part of the Women's Business Center that is part of the SBA, and that one allows us to work with different business owners from all walks of life, no revenue threshold, any ethnicity is welcome. And a little bit of the services that we offer. So we offer one-on-one consulting. So after this, for example, if you are looking for more specialized procurement opportunities, or if you want me to look at your proposals, we do this all complimentary and free of charge because, as I said, we are funded by different government grants. So aside from procurement, we also have counselors that will help with the needs and marketing assessment, developing business plans, any anything else that you would need with business technical assistance. We also have an entrepreneur training program that we offer. We will offer strategic and comprehensive business planning, and then also what things you need to do prior to launching a venture. We also have different business courses depending on the level of business that you're in, all the way from startup up to company in an operation for decades. So the breadth of our clientele is pretty wide range. Then we also offer business financing. So for example, if you are looking for working capital, or any loans to, let's say, bridge the gap, or any lines of credit, that's something that we also offer. And then we also have part of the entire organization is an employee hiring and workforce development. So we can help with outplay services, retention strategies, and then also employee skills training. That's a little bit about PACE. And then the MBDA Center, which, as I mentioned, one of the programs that we offer the procurement training with is MBDA stands for Minority Business Development Agency, and it is a center with 2 locations. And we are part of a national network of over 36 MBDA centers throughout the US. So we offer generally 3 things. Providing access to capital, so whether it's connecting to private lenders, banks, and investors, providing access to contracts, which means assisting to contract and procurement opportunities, and lastly would be providing access to markets, which is positioning to expand the client base and operations to global markets. So we had recently teamed up with an export training facility here in LA so that we can offer our clients any assistance that they would need or you guys need if you're looking to expand your operations overseas. So if you wanted to learn more about, some of the export training programs and also assistance. So I also provide a monthly grant workshop. The next one will be next week. So next week I have a grant workshop on November 19th. But then in December, I think it's December 17th, I also have that grant workshop, but that one will have a special guest who is part of the GoBiz program, and she is part of the export team, and she will talk about a specific grant called the STEP grant that helps with companies who are looking to expand and trade overseas. So that grant actually gives up to $10,000 to business owners who are looking to, let's say, attend trade shows or any assistance that you would need in order to export in different countries. So that would be, yeah, please make sure you don't miss that one because that one we have a special guest who will thoroughly explain what the STEP grant program is. So now let's get started. Just a table of contents. First is why get a small business certification, and then the types of certifications, eligibility and qualifications for some of the certifications, the more popular ones, and also the different levels of certification. So this is pretty much like a hot topic because this is one of the services that I would say 80% of the people, of the business owners that come to me, they're always looking to see why they would need a business certification and what types of certifications there are. So first, as I mentioned, is why get a small business certification? So, what are the purpose for small business certifications? As I always say, it's a matter of public policy. It's to level the playing field to those businesses or business owners who may not have that advantage, to help with capacity building program, and that one for it would be for the depending on the level of government. And also to increase supplier diversity to a larger pool of contractors and subcontractors. And then with regards to increasing supply diversity to the pool of contractors, as you can see or you'll learn later on, their certifications are pretty much are varied. So there's some small business certifications, local business preferences, disadvantaged businesses, women-owned, minority-owned, veteran-owned, and then LGBTQ owned business, which I believe is one of the more recent ones. So how are the certifications utilized? Because sometimes people ask me, is it mandatory? Do I really, really need to have a certification? But before we get to that topic, I wanted to share with you how we actually utilize certifications or different agencies. First would be mandatory requirements. There are some bids or some RFQs or RFPs where it's mandatory that they award it to a diverse contractor or supplier, and it actually adds bid proposal points. For those of you who may or may not have seen an RFP, and I would like you to put in the chat whether you've seen one, right? Like an RFP. So usually RFPs, what they do is it's almost like a grading system. So let's say 100%, and then each section has a certain number of points that are allocated to them. So for example, let's say history, let's say you have a history of past performance. It could be, let's say, 20%, um, or I'm trying to think of the other parts of a proposal, or even just say your the people who work with you, your team, it could be 10%. Have you worked with a specific agency before? So what they do is you actually um, or your qualifications and your actual skills, right? So basically, each one is allocated a certain number of percentage points, which adds up to 100% as a perfect score. So then, if you have a certification, it may add the bid proposal points. And so what I always say is that certifications are good to have. However, they're good to have um, if you're very close, right? So let's say you are at 95%, and then the one that your competitor may be at 96%. So if you have the certification, it may be enough to bump you up to a 97%, almost like an extra credit. However, if you are at, let's say, at 80%, and then the one above you is at 95%, then a qualification or a certification may not help you bump up 15 or 16 basis points, right? So it just depends. So that one, so yeah, so certifications are utilized for a mandatory requirement. Second is for local preference. So it's to keep the opportunities within a certain service area. So that's why there's a local, one of the certification is for local business preference. And then also the same thing, adding proposal points to keep the money local within a specific geographic region that they're trying to promote. And then they're also utilized for a proposal discount, which is I think it's a pretty cool utilization of a certification. So what it is let's say you have a project and then you're bidding. So let's say five of you are bidding on a project and your bid is $100,000. However, if there is a 15% bid reduction point, then your $100,000 bid actually becomes 85,000 for scoring purposes. So if they're looking for the lowest bidder, then a certification would be very useful for you. Okay. And so now that we know how they're utilized, and then also the purpose of it, now we're going to go through just the types of certifications that I have typically seen. And these are, a lot of acronyms, but what I'm gonna do is these are just some of the certifications I've seen, and then we're gonna go and group them based on the level of government. So one would be called the Emerging Business Enterprise. There's an SBE, which I think most people recognize. It's a small business enterprise. MBE is also very, very popular. It's a minority-owned business enterprise. DBE is a disadvantaged business enterprise. WBE is for women business owned. And then EDWOSB is an economically disadvantaged women owned small business, which is a federal certification. And then there's also LGBTE, which is lesbian, gay, transgender business enterprise. Few other certifications that I've seen are the LSBE, which is the local small business enterprise, which we've talked about, and that's in LA County. There's also the SB and the SBPW, which is the small business and small business public works in the state. There's the veteran-owned small business, disabled veteran business. There's also the service disabled veteran-owned small business. And then these are the also federal ones, which is the SBA 8A, the Federal 9-Year Business Development Program, and then also the SBA Hub Zone, which is for economically depressed communities. And we'll talk more about this later. So with that said, we're just going to go through the eligibility and then qualifications. So just on the chat, I know I'd ask, who here, just a show of hands, who here has gotten any of these certifications? Please share, and then also what level. So what type of certification, what level of government, and I would like to see if it's something that you've used already, and whether it's been helpful for you. Yeah, I'm just curious. Oh, great. Okay, so some of you have the MBE, and then yes. Okay. So yeah, I'm just taking more of an informal poll on which, what percentage of people here have certifications. So then I know which certification to help you with. So usually, the eligibility and then the qualification of a oh great, okay, so some have had women owned, economically, yeah, disadvantaged women owned, SBA, right? Great, okay, great, okay. So I see that it seems like your certifications are all different levels of government. So I've seen county, city of LA, I've seen the CPUC, so that would be for public utilities, DGS, which is state, and then the ED, the economically disadvantaged women owned, which is on the federal level. So yeah, excellent. So some of the eligibility, general eligibility requirements, and then the qualified individual. So one would be the qualifying owner, the owner of the business, must have the ability to run the day-to-day operations, the authority to make financial decisions, hold the highest position, and has sufficient experience in the industry. So usually, this is the one who is a 51% unconditional owner of the business. And so, most of the businesses that I've dealt with, I would say about 80% of them are one owner. So they have one owner. So the whole thing with the 51% unconditional owner has never been an issue. And so with that one, it's also the qualifying owner. So, obviously, if there's one owner, they have the ability, they run the day-to-day operations themselves and they make the financial decisions. However, in some instances where there may be two or more owners, and so then, the qualifying owners should have these qualifications in general. Yeah, good question. So, when you say sufficient experience, I don't think there's really a number of years. I mean, although I think generally I would say maybe 2 or more years. I think at that, it seems to be the threshold that I've seen, where at 2 years you say, okay, you have had sufficient experience in the industry. So great question. Okay. Yes. And so what is control, right? So control would be, and if, as I said, we're talking about 51%. So 51%, the power to direct or cause business decisions. Also management, so 51% managed is the 51% would be the 51% position of a president or CEO, and then that person would have to possess a combination of managerial or technical experience in the industry. So I think this one is what they want to prevent is to just have someone who's a CEO, almost like a talking head, which, who may not have the technical experience, but maybe someone who is hired specifically in order to, to fulfill the requirement of being, to fulfill the requirement of the certification. Okay. Right. So now that we've, so this one that we talked about were just general eligibility requirements. So I would say almost all of the certifications that I've seen, they have that 51% or more threshold, right? But then we'll go through each individual certification in greater detail later on. And then this is also more of a general one. So some of the ones where I've seen people apply for certifications, these are just some of the application and supporting documents that they ask for. So what I always recommend is that if you have a Google Drive or some sort of cloud, make sure have all the supporting documents handy. So then you're not scrambling for it because a lot of times they're going to be asking for the same thing. And then the cool thing is that these supporting documents are some of the documents that you're also going to see that they require when you're doing your bids, right? So, for example, one would be corporate documents. So the articles of incorporation, your bylaws, and your stock ledgers, and depending on the type of entity that you have, whether you're an LLC or an S or a C corp. A business license. So whether you have, whether it's a license by the state, so like a city, a license to be in a city, and then also a license that is specific to the industry that you're in, so a contractor license, or if you're in clean tech, any licenses that you think would be relevant to your industry. And then tax returns. So tax returns would be, I always recommend doing 3 years or the most recent 3 years, 2 or 3 years I've seen, so then you can see some sort of trend. And then also your financial statements. So any year-to-date P&L, profit and loss statements, and also balance sheets. And then I think that goes hand in hand with the tax returns. So if you have at least 2 or 3 years of your most recent tax returns and financial statements, I think you're golden. You'll have most of the things that you'll need for the certification and also when you're bidding. And then also resume. So this is two. It could be your personal resume or it could be a capability statement. So, and then for those of you who had attended the capability statement workshop a few weeks ago, then then you have a good idea of what that is. And then if you haven't attended, then make sure to go see the recording on that one or reach out to me one-on-one so I can help you with that one. Then some other supporting documents would be this would be your personal financials. So personal financials, which are your tax returns. And so these are the ones to use for your proof of your net worth. There's some certifications. So for example, the 8A, the SBA 8A, which requires you to be under a certain amount of net worth. So that one they would require that you show them your personal net worth. Then also proof of investment. So this one I don't really see quite often, but it's the owner's investment into the business. The lease agreement would be proof of the business location. And this one would be for, let's say, for a hub zone, or they require you to be in a certain geographic location. And then lastly is a signature bank card. So it could be, that could just be a proof of your business bank account and owner. and that you're the owner. So I think that one is to prove that you have the financial control, as we talked about earlier. Um, okay, couple questions that I'm seeing here is one, where can I see the recordings? And then the recordings are, I will send you a recording of the link, which is in our e-library. So the e-library has a recording of the last three workshops that we've done, and then also some other types of workshops that we have under PACE. So great question. Okay. Oops. And I said, these are just, I would say, just the basic documents that are requested, but there may be other ones, depending on the level or type of certification that you're applying for. Okay. Yeah, so yes, I think a lot of people have question about the recordings. Yeah, so as I said, the recordings I will provide a link later on, and then to connect with me to receive service. Great question. I will send you information about myself, and then how you can reach out to me, and then yeah, and then that would be the first step. So the way I like to do these certifications would be to do it by the level of government. And then later on, we talk about, so from the broadest one, and then all the way down to city, and then later on we'll talk about any additional ones that you might have heard of or may be relevant to you. But I always say the biggest question that I get, and I want you to answer in the chat, is that what certification should you get? Right? And so people always ask me that question, what should I get? So on the chat, I would like you to just chime in. What do you think you should get? Or based on the certification that you got, why did you get that certification? Right. I'm just curious to see. Yeah, so chime in. If you had a certification, why did you get the certification? If you haven't gotten a certification, why do you think you get certain certifications? Okay. So someone says women owned. Okay. So I'll let you chime in on the chat. But yeah, so before I answer that question, I wanted to see what you think. Okay. Yeah. Great. So first was okay. First are federal certifications. So federal certifications, I would say, are the ones that are a little bit, well, because first of all, everyone wants them. Everyone wants the federal certifications. So with that said, they're the ones that are, some of them are pretty backed up. So this one is the first thing I'm going to talk about is the ABA 8A, the Business Development Program, which is divided into two, socially disadvantaged and economically for socially and economically disadvantaged individuals, and then Hub Zone, which is the historically underutilized business zone. There's the women-owned small business, economically disadvantaged small business as well, and the disabled veteran-owned business. Okay, so let's see if you had it on the chat. Okay, gotcha. Okay, so someone said they wanted to get these certifications because these are the ones that you're eligible for, and so that would allow you and your company to control certain points. Yes, great question. But then I also say that there's so many certifications, and that you'll see later on as I go through the slides, there's so many of them that it is it is very time consuming, both of your time and resources. And so when people ask me what they should get, what they should get first, is that I always say get it on the ones that, well, two, I have two opinions. The first opinion is that you get it on the first level of government that you're targeting. So for example, if you wanted to work, let's say you're a smaller contractor or you want to be a subcontractor, but you think you wanted to work first with the city or the county, then it makes sense to get the ones that are city or the county first, right? Because they're the ones that you're going to be doing business with. But if you're not going to be doing work in the federal level in the beginning, then why get that one? And then also the ones that are smaller, city and county, may take shorter time because they may be less complex as well, right? So that's my go-to is get the certification, the level of government or the type of entity or agency that you want to work with. And then the second is um, also the timing, right? Because as I mentioned, some of the federal ones take quite a bit of long time and they have some sort of backlog. So here first, we'll talk about the federal certifications. So we have about four of them, and these ones are the federal certifying agencies. So it's the SBA. So they're the ones that certify the 8A, the hub zone, women owned, the economically disadvantaged women owned small business enterprise, and then the disadvantaged small business. And then the Department of Veterans Affairs, which is under the Veteran Affairs Vets First program, they're the ones that certify whether you're a veteran-owned small business or service-disabled veteran-owned small business. So at least it's simplified, right? There are only two agencies. And so usually what happens is that these federal agencies have a contracting goal. So they change every year. And I believe this is still fairly accurate with regards to the contracting goal. So when they're doing contracting, the goal is to get 25%, 23% a small business, certification, 5%, as you can see, there are different levels. So 5% on a disadvantaged business and a women-owned small business. And then there's also certifications that is a 3% requirement on the hub zone, and then the service disabled veteran-owned program. Okay. So now we're gonna go in greater detail just on the just generally doing business with the federal government. And this one I covered a little bit last week on the portals, but I just wanted to give you a brief overview if you're going to be doing business with the federal government. So first is registering in the portal, which is called SAM, so sam.gov, which is the system for award management. So this one is a database that helps determine if the federal government purchases what you sell. And then this one, you register, you create an account, and then just a few important things to consider would be identifying your NAICS codes, which is an industry code that basically qualifies and puts every sort of industry with a number. So for example, you're in IT, there is a certain NAICS code for it. If you are in cybersecurity, if you are in construction, there's a NAICS code for it. And so what happens is, aside from your own purpose of of identifying where your industry is, it's also helpful when you're doing your capability statement, and then also when you're looking for requests for proposals, when you're looking for these proposals in the portals, as I mentioned last week. And then what you get when you register for sam.gov is a unique entity identifier, which is basically an identifier for your business. I almost consider it as your EIN number, except EIN is for tax purposes, whereas this one is for, other purposes such as the certifications and also proposals. So a little bit more about SAM. So SAM.gov, as I mentioned, is an official U.S. government system that really consolidates all the contracting opportunities for all the businesses within the federal government. So it's mandatory that you register for all contractors, whether you're large or small. There's no fee to register on their site, but this is how you can get paid and then how contracts are managed. So that's how important it is. And it's also important that because it's also updated annually. Um, and so a couple of questions I that I have seen with this one is that sometimes there's a technical glitch on the bank account. I think I've gotten that question a couple times on how come they couldn't either update their bank account or they couldn't update it. Yeah, they couldn't update it or upload it the first time. And so that one, that's kind of like a technical issue with Sam, but I've seen it a few times. So just, something to watch out for. Okay. So now let's talk about just the different federal programs, federal certification programs. So the first one, which is all considered the gold standard in the industry, is called the 8A. So the 8A is a business development program. So the way the public policy behind it is that the SBA, aside from the contracting goals, right? So they support small business, small disadvantaged firms which sophisticated. It has the management and the technical assistance to help you compete for contracts and other business opportunities. So what they can do is they can potentially receive you can potentially receive sole source contracts. Sole source is basically you don't go through a bidding process. Let's say you have a unique service that you offer. They will contact you and you're basically sole source, which is a really good perk to have, right? So what it is, it's up to a ceiling of 4 million for goods and services and up to 7 million for manufacturing. So this is really great once you have the 8A because yeah, because of the ability to have and the potential to be to receive sole source contracts. And then those 8A firms are also eligible to form joint ventures to bid on contracts or to form something called a mentor-protege agreement, which allows the small business to learn the ropes from other more experienced businesses. As you can see, it also enables you to form these joint ventures that will be crucial. So just a couple things that we talk about on the eligibility with the SBA 8A is you have to be American citizen by birth or naturalization. You have to be majority owned, so there's a 51% again, 51% majority owned, and then you are managed and controlled by a socially and economically disadvantaged individual on a full-time basis. Business must be a small business. So there is an SBA size standard. So this is something where the NICS code or the industry code is important to because each industry code has a specific size standard. So for example, small business that is manufacturing has a higher threshold of a size standard than let's say a consulting company. So that's why it's important to really factor in and be accurate on the type of the NICS code that you're in. So then you are accurately categorized. So then you're also on the and accurately categorized for RFP purposes, but also to determine the size standard if you're looking for this type of eligibility. And then the operation must be for 2 years. So that's why someone had asked me about the the experience, the significant experience. That's why I had said 2 years, just because for me it makes sense that if the 8A, the eligibility is 2 years, so 2 years is something that they may have considered significant experience. Then the other one is the personal net worth must be less than 850,000, which is why earlier when we talked about the supporting documents, we talked about that some of the ones that we may need would be the personal net worth of the owner. So that's where this comes into account. Is the personal net worth must be 850K or less. The annual personal income must be less than 400,000. The total assets of the owner, the one who's qualifying, has to be less than 6.5 million. And then, important things that the business must demonstrate potential for success. So, looking at past performance, the principals must show good character, but there's only one-time eligibility. However, once you're eligible, you're in the program for 9 years. So that's why it's really important that when you apply to this, you're ready. You're ready to do business because you only get this one time. You only get this one chance. So this one, I think, is a program that right now it takes about 6 weeks. I'm sorry, 6 months in order to get. So there is a bit of a backlog on this one. However, once you get it, it is the gold standard. So then the other one is the SBA Hub Zone. So the Hub Zone is is a type of it is a geographic region and it's they determine it by the zip code. But it's basically geographic location where there's some sort of disadvantage and they wanted to promote business within that region. So the business must be directly and same thing is directly and unconditionally owned and controlled by at least a 51% US citizen. Business must be a small business based on the standard that we talked about, based on the industry standard. The principal office must be located within a hub zone. So the hub zone, as I mentioned, is something that we can, that you can Google online and say, okay, what is a hub zone? And is my address within a hub zone? And the 35, at least 35% of its employees must reside on the hub zone. And that includes all employees that are in a full-time, part-time, or other basis, so long as the individual works a minimum of 40 hours per month. So it could be individuals from temporary employment agency leasing through a union agreement. And then there's no minimum amount of time the business has been in operation, so it could be less than 2 years. And so if is your business on a hub zone, once you receive the slides, you're able to check here and see if your business is on a hub zone. And yes, and so the good thing about this is, as you can tell, they made it a little bit easier on the number of years that you've been an owner or in business. However, the harder part is that you have to be a designated hub zone and at least 35 year employees must reside in that specific hub zone. Okay. And then the other one is an SBA women-owned small business eligibility. There's also the size standard that you have to meet for a primary industry code. The 51% ownership is still here. The woman who's applying has to be the highest officer position. They have to manage the day-to-day operations, work full-time. There's no number of years in business requirement. And then there's also something called the set aside, which is there's some applicable industry codes where they can set aside some contracts for you. And then along with that one, something very similar is that SBA economically disadvantaged women-owned small business. So same thing as very similar to the women owned earlier, except there is a requirement on the personal net worth, less than 750,000. There's also a requirement on the adjusted gross income, and then also the fair value of their assets. Then a couple things, just the benefits, the awarding goal, right? The 5% that we talked about, some set asides and sole source opportunities. There's also the ability to do sole source of up to 4 million for goods and services and up to 6.5 million if you're in manufacturing. And then there's no term limit on the program participation. And then there's just approximately so many 20 to 30 billion in federal contracts. So if you can just imagine the 5% of that. However, as I mentioned, it's a little bit harder to get, but once you get it, because of the 9 year eligibility for the 8A, the good thing is that once you get that one, then you're able to get it set aside for 9 years, but not for the women owned. There's no term for that. So the other one would be the veteran owned. So we have veteran owned, which is given by the Department of Veteran Affairs. So you have to be a small business because according to the size standard, the 51 ownership is there. There's also management, which is also the 51%. So ownership control, management, and then highest paid position, you have to be a veteran. And then a little niche on that one would be the service disabled veteran-owned small business. So along with the same type of qualifications as a veteran-owned small business, you have to have one or more service disabled veteran manage the day-to-day operations and make the long-term decisions. So now we've gone through the federal contracts, right? And as I mentioned, you the way that I tell my clients on when they ask me whether to get what first certification to get is what level of government are you gonna do business first, right? So if you're ready to do business in the federal government, go for it, right? But As I said, there's a little bit of a backlog on the 8A, and one thing I also didn't mention was there's also a backlog on the women-owned. So I believe the last time I had looked, they had actually closed the filing of the certifications for women-owned. So maybe that was a month ago. So I don't know if they have it back open. So, but I'm assuming that's because there's a big backlog. So now we've talked about the federal government. Now we're going to talk more about the state of California. So Cal eProcure is the marketplace where we look for government opportunities and then where you also get certified on the state level. Okay. And so a couple of certifications under California, under the state, would be the small business and small business public works. So these are some of the requirements: independently owned and operated. So which means you can't be a franchise. You know, that's basically the biggest thing. Your principal office must be located in California. So if you are just a subsidiary and your headquarters in Wisconsin or another state, then you can't qualify for this. The owners also have to be domiciled in California. They have to live in California. They are not dominant in the field of operation. So I think this one is to prevent monopolies. Your receipts are your gross receipts would have to be 16 million or per year, or a $38 million or less on a 3-year average. And then the number of people that would work for the firm has to be 100 for small business, 200 for small business public works employees or less. So as you can see here, the definition of a small business really isn't our typical definition of a small business, right? So you would think that small business may be 10 or less, but here you'll see that it's actually 100 for small business and then 200 for small business public works. So that's just for the general services. There's also a disadvantaged veteran business enterprise certification under the state. So these are some of the qualifications. We also have the 51% or more ownership, the domicile in California. You have to be a veteran of the U.S. military, and then the service-connected disability of 10% or more. And then daily operations have to be managed and controlled by the veteran. Also, the whole thing with the 51% or more control, like ownership. And the home office must be located in the US. So, and then some of the benefits, as I mentioned before, similar to what we talked about with the federal contracting goal, is that the government, the state of California also has a goal, and the goal is to spend 25% of their contract dollars with small business and 3% with disabled veteran business enterprises. There's also some eligibility for bid preference, access to some contract opportunities, which may be only available to certified businesses. And then this is something that's cool, which is leveraging the benefits included in the Prompt Payment Act, where you let's say if your payment normally is net 90 or net 60, then it may enable you to get a more prompt payment or a shorter net payment. Some of the California agencies that accept this certification are these. So it's pretty varied. California Public Utilities Commission, the California colleges and universities, a lot of the Department of State hospitals, DMV. So some of the agencies that you typically think about, and then also Caltrans, Coastal Commission, and then yeah, the California colleges and universities. So it's pretty varied. Okay, and then some other certifications. And at this point, there's just so many certifications. We only have 10 minutes left. So I'm going to provide these slides with you, but I'm just going to go over them a little bit more quickly, just so you can get a better grasp of them in context. But feel free to look at these in greater detail when you receive the slides, but also do a one-on-one with me on what type of certifications you can get, and then I can also help you apply for them. So now we've gone through the city, we've gone through federal, we've gone through the state. Now we're going to go through the Caltrans and Metro certification. And these ones, Some of the requirements, business must be for profit. There's also the personal net worth requirement, and then also the gross receipt requirement, right? So as you can see here, 23.98 million on a 3-year average. That is, that is a pretty high threshold, which is, I think, a little bit is very surprising to a lot of people. So same thing with the 51% ownership, and then control, and then manage control on of management and the daily operations. Then also, the applicant must be a U.S. citizen or lawfully admitted permanent resident, and for DBE, owner must be they must belong to some of these demographics that are mentioned below. So now we're going to talk about the one that's from the California Public Utilities Commission, accepted by Southern California Edison, the gas company Pacific Gas, and the Metropolitan Water District, AT&T, and Verizon. So just very quickly, sorry, let me go back to that one. So this one is, according to the General Order 156, utility companies with gross revenues greater than 25 million annually, they have to voluntarily participate in a supplier diversity program. And this enables you to develop and implement measures to increase the utilization of certain types of demographics in their procurement activities. So that's just the public policy behind the certifications. Okay. So this one is, some of you may be familiar with the supplier clearinghouse. And so what the supplier clearinghouse is it's currently operated by the supplier clearinghouse, but it verifies the eligibility of these type of demographics: women, minority, LGBTQ, and then persons with disabilities, for certification. So it enters the certified business enterprises into a database that are used by participating utilities and covered entities. So it's basically a repository for you to put your information in, and then a lot of participating utilities and entities will look at these and say, okay, which companies are, let's say if they're specifically looking for disabled veteran business enterprises, so this could be a database that they look into. So some of the ones, now we've gone through federal, state, now we're going to go through the regional certifications. So one of them is the LA County. LA County has two certifications. One is the local small business enterprise, which is a 25% goal on the contracting. And the other one is a community business enterprise, which is an aspirational certification. And then there's also one for the city of LA. So there's one, city of LA has a few actually. Small business enterprise, local business enterprise, one for minority and women owned, disadvantaged business enterprise, local business. And then this one would be important if you're looking to do work with the airport or LAWA, which is the Airport Concession Disadvantaged Small Business. And then specifically the Metropolitan Transportation Authority has two certifications, which is the Small Business Enterprise and then also the Disadvantaged Enterprise. There's also another one that's specific to the LA Unified School District. So the Small Business Enterprise that is that LAUSD also accepts. And then now we're going to talk about, now we've talked, very fast and very briefly on the federal, state, county, and city. So those are all government entities or utility companies. So now we're going to talk more about the private sector certifications. So two of the major ones that I recommend would be the National Minority Supplier Business Development Council, or NMBDC, NMSBDC, and the Women Business Enterprise National Council, which is WeBank. So this one is private sector. A lot of the Fortune 5,000 companies actually look into these certifications. So this National Minority Supplier Business Development Council, some of their requirements is that they are 50, same thing. As we can say, there's a trend here that we look into. Is this the 51% ownership, management, operation, and control by an ethnic minority owner or a group of minority owners? They must be the one that's 51% ownership must be a U.S. citizen. Highest title position must be held by the minority owner. And your ability to submit all required business documentation for your company. So that's why when we talked earlier about the application and supporting documents and how I recommend that you just keep them handy, both for government and then also private sector certification. And then the annual membership varies. So I think someone had mentioned on the chat whether their certifications are free or not. So it depends. As you can see, these ones are paid, the private sector, but the ones that are government are not paid. They're free to get. And then um, the other second one that is for private sector and for women is for the Women Business Enterprise National Council or the WeBank. 51% ownership, as we mentioned, 51% ownership, management, operation, and control by a women owner or a group of women. So let's say if you have three owners, but then two out of the three are women, so let's say 2/3 of them are women, so this one qualifies as well. Women owners make up 51% ownership. They must be a U.S. citizen. A highest position must be held by a woman, so the CEO. So let's say same thing. Let's say there are three of you, two women and one male. So then the CEO position must be held by a woman. So one of the two women that own the company, right? And ability to submit all required documentation as well. And then also there's a membership fee. So as you can see, these ones are, there's an ability to get many, many different types of certifications. But the goal is to get it on where you want to do business first, right? And then, or you can also do it concurrently. So you may want to get the one that is low-hanging fruit, then you want to do business with. But if your aspiration is to do work with the federal government, then it may be worth it to start the SBA 8A if you qualify for it, or the women-owned business if you qualify for it, while you're doing the other certifications. So at this moment, I wanted to just do a shout out to our guests and partners. I know that FACCOC is here. Okay, there you go. I know that FACCOC is here, so welcome. I know Gigi Larson is here, president of FACCOC. We also have some of our other partners, which are the Orange County Regional Consortium. We also have one of our partners as NAFA, National Federation of Filipino Associations. We also have the City of Monterey Park, and then also CMTC, which is California Manufacturing Technology Consultants. And they were our special guests last week. So at this point, we only have 1 minute to spare. So I wanted to make sure you get my contact information. So if you wanted to do a one-on-one with me, please scan this QR code or as an alternative, just feel free to email me, cspirit@pcla.org or reach out to me via text. So I just wanted to give you a few seconds to do that. Okay, because I know some people had mentioned on how to reach me. So you can reach me two ways. You can either scan this and then fill out the information that we would need to get you started, or you can just directly text me and say, hey, you know what? Um, you went over the slides so quickly, and I wanted to know what certifications I should get. So I will do a one-on-one with you.